In today's ever supply chain landscape, the one constant is warehouses. And even with the introduction of AI and robots, there's still another common factor: people. The one thing that's changing is how gamification is helping manage, train, and even upskill warehouse personnel. Welcome to Business Now 101, a podcast that explores the uncommon side of businesses. I'm your host, Olivier Bousset, and in today's episode, I'm joined by Narges, Paul, and Gary, founders of Ohanna, where we discuss this and so much more.
Hi guys, welcome to Business Now 101. So let's just jump right into it. Take 60 seconds and introduce yourselves.
Hi, yes, thank you. Thank you for having us. I'm Narges, CEO and co-founder of Ohanna.ai. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a co-founder of two startups. And previously, I'm a graduate student of Master of Management Analytics from Queen's University, Smith School of Business. And also I have a master's degree in quality system engineering.
Paul?
Okay, I'll come in next. So I'm a classmate of Narges, and I'm truly inspired by her passion to the warehouse workers, as well as after some market research, I do find that it's a great opportunity for us to enter into this space to automate some of the tasks in a warehouse, as well as planning and combining the data platform with the warehouse workers and as well as the warehouse management. Before that, I spent 13 years working corporate finance in Hong Kong. I have a master's degree in management analytics as well as in real estate investing. And yeah, that's pretty much me. Thank you.
Perfect. Gary?
Yeah, I'm Gary Newbury. I am a senior exec on call, specialising in rapid performance improvement across retail supply chains and the last mile. And my purpose in life is to inspire retail business leaders to think big, be bold, scale, adapt and win, one epic supply chain transformation at a time. I came across these guys, these very brainy guys. I actually have two master's degrees myself, so I don't feel too overwhelmed by the brain power on this call. But I came across these guys, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. Somebody reached out to me and said, these folk need some help with warehousing and understanding warehousing in a lot more detail. And so I just reached out. We had a number of conversations, and lo and behold, I kind of joined the crew.
Excellent. So let's start off with telling us about the project. Give us the 60-second business elevator pitch.
Sure, I can start off and then pass it to Gary and Paul. So what we're working on is a gamified and data-driven workforce turnover management, training management, and performance management system for warehousing and storage industry. Our vision is to be the rocket fuel for workforces of the future and try to tap into the high turnover and short labor problems that are happening in the market.
And I think it's fair to say that I was working with a client over in the Milton Way, which is one of the fastest growing places in Ontario in terms of workforces. And the company I was working with was always requesting, asking people to come in to do selection roles and stuff, picking. They're desperate to get people to come in, but the experience of employees wasn't always what it perhaps ought to be, given that need for employees to come in and help a company through some challenging times with demand. So this existed pre-pandemic. The pandemic just made things a lot harder for companies to, one, attract people, and more importantly, to retain them.
Right. If anything, I could just supplement with some data. We had recently acquired data for major warehouse operators in the West Coast, and we have 63% of the people who left within 12 months to the warehousing. That's a staggering number, and it is higher than any sort of planners out there could actually sort of anticipate. And anything that we can do to sort of help the people to build a career in the warehouse industry, as well as the management to get engaged and also try to reach out to these workers, I think it will be a big win. And so far, what we think that would help is basically by focus on the training and also certification. And then the other thing is that we allow a communication between the warehouse managers and the workers through mobile applications.
That's very interesting, and sort of leads into my next question. When you first started this project, had a problem you were looking to solve. Is that problem, did that shift, did that pivot, or is that you still have the original problem that you're still aiming to solve?
Yeah, I can start with this one. We actually pivoted 3 times so far. So, like as technology people, we came to, like be in love so much with the, technology part of the work that honestly, at the beginning, we were not sure even if there's actually a problem in warehousing. So we started by using, algorithms to optimize workforce performance and, I would say workload performance optimization. And then really like having just an algorithm without talking to the target market was a wrong approach. So we had to just like go back and start again doing the market research, going to the warehouses, talking to business people and warehouse workers, and find out what is the actual problem that they're facing and they need help with.
Initially, we almost backed ourselves up into a corner trying to solve an NP hard problem. For anyone who's out there as nerdy as ours, like NP hard is pretty much impossible. But then it was about like redesigning the layouts as well as the picking orders for people. And that needs to be done in real time as well. So it's going to be really hard. But then we talked to the people who actually worked in this industry, what pains them, what needs improvement. It turns out the staffing is actually the key here. There's a chronic lack of people who actually want to enter into the industry. And then once they recruited the people, they just have a really high turnover. So that is a big problem. And then we set out to solve this problem instead.
That's really interesting. So that was a major pivot from the original plan, from what I remember.
Yeah.
So looking back at this pivot and this change, are you feeling that your North Star, what you're aiming to solve, is solvable with your software, with your solution?
Well, this is actually a complicated problem to solve because we are tackling, we are trying to kind of like bound technology with human instinct and what drives people to work and be engaged at work. So that's not an easy problem to solve, and it's pretty interesting. People, they come with a lot of theories behind why is the reason of like having a high turnover in the warehouse market, and they come with a lot of reasons like compensation, burnout, and along with other things. But the main problem is like if you don't go there and see what they're facing in a day in and out, and how they're kind of like trying to solve their problems they're facing in a daily task, you can never be successful in like finding a solution to this problem, to the turnover problem. And then besides that, looking at what's going on in warehousing right now with the cell phone bans. And Gary just sent us a news actually a few hours ago that what is happening in Amazon warehouses because of having this ban for bringing cell phones to the work. So I guess like it is not going to be an easy problem to solve, but it's definitely solvable, or we can actually make improvements if it's not completely solved.
Right. Just from my perspective, I think there are some low-hanging fruits, at least in the industry. We're not going to solve turnover, like, reduce it from 60% to 0%. That's not realistic. But we can map out certain things that we realize are sort of hurting people's engagement with their job, like a lack of a career path, lack of training, lack of engagement to report the daily issues that have been encountered during the 8-hour shift that they had worked in the warehouse. That is really hard work. So those things, we definitely believe they would help. And eventually we will use data to prove that once we have established those communication channels as well as training and certification, those would definitely help. So far, unfortunately, it's just sort of our theory that it would help, but then we definitely believe those are low-hanging fruits that were not sort of covered by the existing sort of provisions.
Yeah, and if I could just add a few extra things, and what the package will, or the app, sorry, to use the right term, what the app may facilitate is a change of way of thinking around how employees are onboarded. I've been in lots of warehouses where the task is reduced to lift it from there and put it to there. And at one level, brilliant, because you can actually manage, if you're of a certain mindset, you can manage that very easily. You just bring somebody in who can lift it from A and put it to B. But often when we think about customers and where we deliver value to customers, We need people who are much more flexibly minded on the floor than that. And the only way we can do that is making sure that the onboarding is well structured. So instead of saying, okay, we're going to train you or onboard you for maybe half a day, give you health and safety, what you can and can't do, and all the almost negative aspects of bringing people on board, so it sets the scene for potential departure at some stage. I think that this package will allow people to have a different view about onboarding, that you spend a couple of days on receiving, spend a couple of days in picking, if you've got a forklift truck driving license, spend a couple of days on replan, then spend a bit of time in loading, and actually structure that time so that people get a very wide appreciation of what it is to work in this warehouse. And through that, it will engage them in the totality of what the warehouse is about. And also, we can then use the same basic framework to actually look at career paths through the warehouse to other sections. And one of the things that we often fall into a trap of as warehouse managers, we have our sort of halo effect around certain individuals that go, I've got to move them up the path. I've got to move that guy or that lady from that position into this position. But we overlook the fact that some people may actually want that position, but there's no obvious way of them indicating that because their behavior or they're not in that halo effect. So in the package, what we're hoping to achieve is for people to have all the different roles in the warehouse and actually to indicate which ones would be really keen to do it. And maybe through the certifications and other training things that you do, they position themselves to be the next supervisor, the next guy lady who looks after the loading or whatever it might be. This is opportunity that we don't have in a typical warehouse. We don't have access to that, and the technology of the app can allow us to have a capacity to look at these things.
Yeah, that's a great point, and sort of leads into my next question. What's the biggest roadblock you see currently to get your service out to customers? Because it's so new, it's something that not only has to be accepted by warehouse managers, but as well as their managers and the company as a whole, but the industry.
Yeah, I can start with this one, and this is from my perspective, because certainly there are many different uncertainties along the way, but the biggest one that I see, at least from my point of view, is like being in love with the product. Because like the point is that the reality is we're not in the target market demographic, so none of us are warehouse workers. So as a person with technology background, I want to design a product that is like so much perfect, and I just like love to use it myself. But without me being in that target market, there's no need for me to love the product. So I would say we need to love the invention, but innovation, meaning the product coming to commercialization, it is not necessary for us to love it. It's actually necessary for warehouse workers to like be fully engaged and love the final product. So that can be challenging, specifically coming from like working long hours of week, on a product that you are not going to use it. You're just like the creator. And I can understand, like why most of the project they die for entrepreneurs, because you just like you try. It's sometimes you try to you are in the loop of trying to design a product for yourself rather than the target market.
Yeah, I cannot agree more with Narges. So the way we see it, we want to function as a bridge between the management as well as the workers. So one thing is that we need to sell up, which is to sell to the upper management why this is necessary. The other is really to encourage the adoption in the workforce. For that, we have already designed a strategy around the centrality of the people's network in the workforce. It's actually pretty similar to marketing in a lot of the consumer goods, where you need to identify a key influencer and then try to get through there. And just in this particular warehouse, we have identified a few individuals who are really key influencers in this warehouse. And then if we can persuade them and to let them see the usefulness of our application package, then we believe the adoption would be voluntary as well as widespread.
That's great. And on looking at it with this roadblock and sort of the way you overcame it, what was one of the key strategies around that? What was one of the parts that you said, oh, okay, we see where the roadblock is? Like, was there something that came out and sort of really hit you to say this is a roadblock, or was it just we saw the progress that you're trying to?
Oh, we absolutely need to talk to people. So that I think that's what we're doing. We already identified people there, and then we will just let them test the application. We are now alphas. Eventually, just going to be a lot of beta testing and adding or removing features that are not useful for this particular warehouse, or something that we believe could be generalized. Then we will just more focus on that.
That's interesting.
If I can add,
Yeah.
to the previous point, I guess market validation is underestimated. And it is so true that, like if you want to solve a problem, you really need to spend, 99% of the time, or 90%, I'm not sure, on defining the problem and understanding the problem. And that's exactly market validation, going to the warehouse or, any other industry that you're trying to create a solution for. And just like work with people and just be there in a day in and out and see what are the problems they're facing and how they're actually trying to solve it themselves without any help.
Yeah, it was actually Einstein said if I had an hour to solve a big problem to save the world, I'd spend 55 minutes on trying to define what the problem is and just spend the rest of the time fixing the problem once I understood what it was. But I think that what I've learned from working with Paul and Narges is a great example of design thinking, because it's so easy just to turn up to the market and say, I've got this very highly polished, very likable kind of, in Narges terms, very likable product because I've been working on it. I've been pouring blood, sweat, and tears into this, and you must like it, surely. And the design thinking approach is saying, look, we've got this product, we've got some edges around, some sort of crazy grey bits around the edges, which we think we can develop, but we want to start here with you and see what kind of a journey we can get on together. And I think that's, as I say, that's a great example of design thinking in action.
Yeah,
that's great. So if I were to ask you guys, if you can go back in time and leave yourself a 30-second voicemail on something you spotted today that you should have known before, what would that be?
Yeah, I can jump in. So it also goes back to our previous conversation. I would tell myself, go out there, go visit warehouses, talk to warehouse workers, and try to understand the problem. And as I said, this is underestimated, but it's very important. Like this is the basic of everything you do, and try to actually put yourself in their shoes. Just like experience the process from a warehouse worker's perspective. That would be my suggestion to myself, rather than sitting behind a computer and coding a fabulous algorithm for myself.
I mean, for me, if I could just sort of call myself in, I don't know, a few months ago, I would say like call Gary, get him there.
I think to the point that Paul and Narges has suggested, I think if you're going to go into a domain as a technology person, you do need that glue that brings the domain or subject matter area together with a technology. And I think that's the combination that works here, because these two guys are super brainy on that stuff, and I'm a bit dumb, whereas I'm super brainy on the actual design of a warehouse, how it should operate, and all those kind of things that would be missing normally from just a technology-driven project.
That's a really good point. And so now looking at how you guys have structured and bringing Gary in, what's going to be your go-to marketing strategy to go and get it to mass audiences outside of just the core group of people you're talking to now?
I guess the main channel is going to be actually brand ambassadors. So, these warehouse workers and managers, they have, communities and they talk to each other. So if they love the product and they start using it, they can recommend it to each others. And of course, the other thing is going to, I would say shows and also seminars and webinars and introduce our product and bring that awareness to the market. As well as, I guess, a main part of our work is really creating that relationship with warehouse owners and warehouse managers. So that part can be quite challenging, but thanks to Gary, he's a very famous face in supply chain and warehousing industry. So yeah, we almost we're good to go, hopefully.
Gary?
And to that point, that Narges took the quite a positive stance and sort of signed up for the kind of a leading warehousing advocacy body who has quite an extensive network of members, both across North America, but more particularly in Canada, probably centred in the Ontario market. So we've see access to the decision makers. It's not the people who go there are the decision makers, not necessarily just the guys who are running a warehouse. So that it's a chance to influence those as well.
Yeah, I find that really interesting. So brand ambassadors, are you going to look at having your organization become a center hub of expertise that you're going to go and bring those ambassadors to you and then send them back out to keep promoting your product? Is that one of the go-tos you're going to be using?
What I actually, Paul, if you want to jump in, you can jump in. But what I actually meant is like, first few warehouses, people, they start, using this application. And it is very common for warehouse workers to move from, kind of like they move from one warehouse to another, or they move from one task to another task or position. So just like being familiar with our brand and our name and the product that we have, they can kind of like recommend it to their colleagues whenever they move to somewhere new, or even because we have different functionalities and features for warehouse workers to facilitate their growth. So when they go to find a new job, or even when even if they're staying at the same company, always carrying that resume with themselves, that we graduated from, we got these certificates through this application and through these guys. So that's kind of like being an ambassador for us, as well as managers seeing the result, so they can come and testimony, and show that they actually have growth in their sales and, KPIs, and that will help us. Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you are going to create a certification program. You are going to create a training program that allows these warehouse workers and managers to get certified and carry that with them to other locations, so it brings value to them. That's really an interesting point. How are you going to create the organization itself to become hubs, like a sort of a hub for everybody to reach out to and look up information? Are you going to use like newsletters? Are you going to create it on your website? Or are you going to do it only in a training sessions, like only really one-on-one to each of the warehouses?
Well, so that's a really good point, and it speaks to the broader sense of marketing versus sales. So we definitely are, when we do the financial planning, we definitely focus on the sales part a lot more. But then to brandish our capabilities as well as our sort of offerings, it is very important that we're going to design a lot of outreach programs in the social networks, as well as sort of, even talking to your podcast, which is a part of the effort for us to really put ourselves out there to let the broader community know about our presence as well as our capabilities. I think that those are very important aspects. We definitely want to be the sort of the knowledge leaders in the industry, and because we definitely see that there is a lot of transition that is happening in the warehouse industry as well as the broader logistic industry, particularly in the area of staffing, and that this acute problem that we are trying to solve. And if we can update people, the broader community, of our progress, I believe a lot of people will be on board, and they will see the opportunity to either work with us or generally thinking in the lines that we are thinking. And that would, regardless whether they work with us or not, I think that will going to benefit a lot of people down the lines.
Yeah, that's great. That's excellent. So now looking at your industry in total, what excites you about this industry, or what concerns you right now?
I think Gary has a lot of interesting idea for this question, but I'm gonna start with a few numbers. So the compound annual growth rate for online shopping pre-COVID was 1%, and after COVID we see 12% compound annual growth rate for online shopping. So we're seeing the pains. And it seems like e-commerce engine is moving towards digitalization, and digitalization is not really an option anymore, because I actually read an interesting article a few days ago, and it's interesting. Without digital transformation, 40% of Fortune 500 firms will not exist in 10 years. That's a crazy number. 40% of Fortune 500. So what excites me really is seeing the digital transformation happening, and I think automation is really the next step, at least for me, because I think digital transformation comes first, and then automation is the next step. Because without having everything digitalized, it's extremely hard to bring automation to the board. And for me, yeah, I really want to see like how, robots are going to collaborate, as cobots. And, the rate of adoption is pretty low right now. And it's going to happen in the next 10, 15 years. But that's something that's really interesting and it's exciting for me.
Yeah, I mean, if I may, and I'll probably leave the best of Gary to the last. So, personally, I just felt, the blue collar workers, they're really at a disadvantage now, right? So the white collar workers, they not only get a lot of good sort of treatment as well as during COVID period, they got to work at home. They also get a lot of free trainings in the form of like Coursera, Udemy, and any of the MOOC sort of courses. I remember like about, I think 10 years ago, there was some open source movement started in MIT, and then they gradually morphed into this global idea of like teach it once, and then millions of people could learn it all over, but then and mostly for free. But then when we look at the blue collar workers and their jobs, these tasks that they're facing, there is no codified sort of operating procedures, and there's no generalizable safe and health sort of advices for them. So we are looking at this and we are thinking, at least personally myself, it was just such an unfair stage, and they need to brave the COVID-19 sort of infection. And one of the things that we're designing is really to keep people distanced from other workers so that they will not be infected by COVID-19. And the training program, which is essentially like they just got some training at the beginning of the employment and not a lot of follow-ups. So we're sort of trying to gamify that and then try to encourage people to take on this training and put them into their credentials so that they move to a future employer. They could just look at that and get assurance, as well as sort of portable skill sets throughout their career. So that, I mean, for me, it's really just looking at this, and definitely I wanted to, help out with this perspective, just helping these workers to have a better sort of chance.
From my point of view, that there's a lot of talk about e-commerce almost replacing traditional based retailing, so stores. And I think that we could be lulled into a sense that automation within warehousing will replace lots of conventional warehousing. I actually don't think I think we're a long way away from that, in the sense of, if we look in Canada, that an Ocado facility is like $100 million worth of investment for Voila. Metro's invested $400 million in a site down in Etobicoke. These are like big ticket items, and there has to be a real huge sway in the board, in the C-suite, to actually say, rather than invest in stores, we're going to spend all this money in the warehouse. So that's a massive shift. So I think that conventional warehouses, i.e. ones with actual people in them, will last for a long, long time. Not only because of the scaling, and also sometimes because people just haven't really spent too much time in those environments. They still don't think, 2 years into a pandemic, they're still struggling to see the value of a well-run warehouse. All they see is people churning, not getting the stuff out on time. It's all very tactical. And I think that this is a great time, this opportunity of this time is great, because if we can give warehouse managers and wider business much more visibility of the things that, certainly as a an operator myself, I just didn't have visibility of. I used to be able to go out the door and take a snapshot of what was going on around me, see some people, halo effect and whatever, they're great guys, whatever. Now we can actually have data in that environment to map all these connections, all these paths. We can start to do some proper work that makes sense. More often than not, we find that organisations haven't invested heavily in things like warehouse management systems, which is like a big key in this puzzle. And when they have, they may not have even anticipated having to not just move cases, but moves to actually do subcarton picking and pick out an item and put them in another box as part of an overall blended operation. So these are almost seismic changes going on within warehousing. But I just sort of bring the point back to the focus that the app is going to provide lots of almost off system data an opportunity for communication, for mapping problems that allows the employee, the manager, to see the problems in more clarity. Because it's so easy in a warehouse just to go, oh, the order's not going out today, we've got to focus on that. Oh, but there's a leak in the roof. Oh, don't worry about that. Got to get, focus on today's job. And the data is going to provide much more sort of background and context as to where the real problems are, where the real opportunities are. And I think that this is something that the app's going to, once it's seen in the proper context, it would just, I'm hoping, it would take off like wildfire.
That's a great point. Yeah, and I honestly believe that the industry itself is poised for the change. There's a need for more data on the ground level in warehouses. I see that myself. So that's really an interesting overview of it. Thanks. All right, so my next questions are going to learn more about you guys as individual entrepreneurs as opposed to just the big company. So I'm going to ask each of you guys to answer the next questions. First one, what's one of the habits that makes you really productive as entrepreneurs?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. I guess scheduling and being kind of like having a schedule of what to do next and coming into priorities that what are the most important things to do, because there's millions of things that you can do as an entrepreneur in every single hour, like millions of things. And then kind of like coming into a decision tree and like deciding like what are the next main thing that you need to do in order to move things forward. And that's not an easy task. I would say it is not really easy, because when you work for a big enterprise, when you work for other enterprises, it's like you always know what task to tackle because somebody gives you an order. But when you are an entrepreneur, you kind of like you need to come up with your own schedule, and sometimes, most often, you need to come up with other people's schedule as well. So you need to tell them what to do. So that's scheduling is time management is the most important thing.
Paul?
Right. So for me, it will be a trick. I basically sign a contract with myself. So there are things that I don't want to do, and there are things I'm very keen to do. But then I would say, like, I don't do the things I'm very keen to do unless I do the things that I'm not so keen to do. So that's a sort of a self-contracting thing. So far, I've never been breaking my contract, including sort of exercise, as well as sort of a variety of other things, including ice cream. So, so that's pretty much it.
Yeah, for me, it's always been discipline. To Narges' point about you only have a finite amount of time. You've got to get a lot of things done. The only way to get through that is to have a discipline. And to Paul's point, there are lots of things that we don't like doing. And it's so easy to put it on the back burner. But actually, I found over life that if you've got a list of things you don't like doing, just do those first. Get them done. And you sometimes find something which you thought might take weeks and months, and there's so many components of this I have to, and they might not like me if it involves people. Just get it done, knock it off, and get into the good stuff.
That's great points. All right, my next question. As an entrepreneur, what is one thing that gives you an edge that you do daily? It could be exercising, yoga, whatever. But the one thing that you feel that is my ritual that makes me productive, Narges?
I'm the worst person to ask this question because I'm not sure if it's usual or not, but I can work tirelessly. Like, I love what I'm doing. I love creation. And like, I can just work, 10, 12 hours, 14 hours a day without feeling tired. I just like need to sleep a few hours and then go back to it. So my fun is my work, my life is my work. I love it. I love doing it. And I love being a creative, innovative person. So I don't know. For me, maybe meditation. Sometimes I do meditation, but yeah, even like it's hard for me because when I do meditation, I still like my brain is sometimes still meditate on work. So I don't know.
Paul?
I would really say collaboration. So I'm in general a pretty introverted person. So I don't really, sort of share that much. But then once I, sort of get into the team setting and really I got the honor to talk to people like Gary and Narges, it always get my creative juice flowing and makes me actually more energetic to carry on the tasks that follows.
Yeah, I'm sort of mark 10 out of 10 on that with Paul. That we've had some conversations. I can see his brain working, and off he goes into your stratosphere. But for me, it's routine. I generally, not always, get up at about 3:15, go to the gym for an hour and a half, and I have my sort of normal ablutions in the morning at 7 o'clock on my desk, hit my email, dun, 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 and you can get having that routine means that every day almost sounds like it's the same, but it isn't. It gives you capacity to think of other things that might need to go on the to-do list, or you might have to plan in, or whatever. But if you start with no routine, every day's a complete muddle. Certainly from my perspective, and it may be because I'm highly introverted and highly intrinsically motivated, so I need the routine. And I think I would suggest that of most of the people I know, senior guys, entrepreneurs, tend to have a routine, and it's probably their red socks they wear just to get the day off to a good start, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, that's really interesting. For me, it's journaling. Every day I journal. Every day, first thing I do, I get up, I journal, I put all my ideas, and it's something I learned from one of my old mentors. And journaling helps me focus for the day, but it also lets me sort of vent out what bugged me yesterday, what I failed at, and it sort of forces me to move forward.
Just on that point, but what I've found to be very helpful is a version of that, which is my to-do list, because I just write down copious to-do things. This is actually a very short one, but doing that at the end of a day so that you can deal with some of the things that you just mentioned there, Olivia, that making sure that you got your goal set for the next day rather than arriving at a desk, right, because you've slept on things and you might have forgot things. Whereas when you're in the battle, you can write these things down in great detail, and they're there. You can go to sleep, you rest for the day, you get up, and it's there ready to go.
Yeah, that's great points. All right. So as an organization, certainly now there's three of you. What is the one business software that you operate everything on, like Slack or Google?
I would say a combination of both. Slack is a daily usage for DevOps, communication with DevOps team, and for internal communication together, we usually use Google, Gmail, and G Suite for putting our documents there and keeping them. Yeah.
That's interesting. All right. One piece of technology you guys could not live without. I think I know Narges' answer, the phone. So, but what's one other piece? Yeah, okay. Is everybody the phone?
I would really say like internet. I mean, like it's sort of another level of keeping people connected, and as well as keeping in touch of what is going on in the industry as well as the other people's lives. So that those things are really important to me.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's funny I asked that question. So I always thought I would get the same answer. For me, it's my phone, right? So I go with my phone everywhere. And you'd be amazed how many different answers I get. Everybody has a different thing, and I was really amazed. So I always ask the question anyways, because sometimes it is the phone, and other times it's all kinds of different things. All right. One question I'd love to ask everybody, and I think this is super important. Business book you would suggest that everybody should read, that's something that really sort of changed your mindset around the business or the industry you're in?
So the one that really changed my perspective about, not just the business, but also looking at work and the culture of work, The Heart of Business by Hobart Julie. He's the I think he's the ex-CEO of Best Buy, if I'm not wrong. Yes. And yeah, he has very interesting points of, how to look at the culture of working and how it's, life fulfillment and search for meaning for human being, not just the tools for, bringing money on the table. So that was very interesting for me.
Yeah, I'll put my hat onto the business model generation. I think it's a pretty good book. Although the size is sort of pretty irregular, but it sort of really popularized the concept of business model canvas, where it lists out the key elements of your business model and force you to really think about sort of different aspects of it, and not to sort of skim over some of the things that you thought you have got it, but then you really need to put a sort of a sticker notes onto it.
Yeah, for me, I buy lots of retail books and I always have every anticipation of reading them at some point. But one I have read is a book called something like The Great Transition by George Minakakis, who's a co-host on my podcast group, the Business of Retail. Really short chapters, which plays very heavily to my reading style because I lose interest after a while. But there's one thing in there which just slipped in there, and I think it's a very profound statement for businesses to understand that. He wrote it down that competitors aren't the enemy. The failure to create trends is. And I think if we can understand that as we think about business, that we can confuse ourselves by, if we're in retail, which I am, been living with retail for a long, long time. But if we focus on Amazon, what are Amazon doing? Stop that thinking. Think about what can you do as a retailer or as a business to create trends in your marketplace. It was just it was smuggled in there, but that's been quite a steer for me in my more later career to actually have that spit out so very brilliantly and clearly.
That's great. Thanks for the share, guys. All right, my last question, and just wrap it up. How can people reach out to you? What's the best way for people to reach out?
I guess for me at least, it's through LinkedIn and also our website. So I have it's interesting, but I have my phone number, I have my email address there. So yeah, people, they can reach out easily.
Paul?
Yeah, that will be the Ohanna.ai. And if I want to spell out the web address, that's OHANNA.ai. Ohanna stands for family in Hawaii.
Gary?
Yes, I'm quite visible on LinkedIn for having quite a lot of contrarian views to the established way of thinking. But podcast channels, my own retail aid, that's all one string, the Business of Retail and the Retail Code. Very easy to find on LinkedIn under Gary Newbury. And I invite people, if they want to connect, please do. But just write, if you have the opportunity, just write a quick note. Otherwise, because I do get quite a lot of invites every day, and if I detect somebody trying to sell me something, I tend to ignore them.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I want to thank all three of you for joining me today. I so appreciate it. It was really wonderful, folks. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Olivier. Thank you for your time and interest in us.
Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.